بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد قد قال الله تبارك وتعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر صدق الله العظيم. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من أن أضل أو أضل أو أضل أو أضل أو أظلم أو أظلم أو أجهل أو يجهل علي. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. As Sheikh has already mentioned, verily the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is so important to not just as Muslims but the whole of mankind. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent down as rahmatan lil alameen, as a source of mercy for the whole of mankind. Rahmatan lil alameen, for both the worlds. He was a source of rahmah, mercy for jinn and ins, for this life and the hereafter. So there is nothing more important for mankind, not just Muslims, for mankind more important than the life, the teachings, and the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, mashallah, over the years, over the months, there have been Seerah programs, and alhamdulillah, I've been fortunate to be given the opportunity to hopefully be able to relate some incidents in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that first and foremost it may become a source of forgiveness for myself, so that hopefully maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be able to count me from amongst those that have been able to relate the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that it could become a source of my own salvation. Because verily the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the mention of the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, any aspect of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be mentioned, to be made tadhkir of, to speak about, is in itself a source of mercy, just like the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is. And mashallah, as I've been informed, you've already reached or surpassed the Raqq'a, the story of Uhud, and which historians have narrated occurred in the month of Shawwal, and very close by the 4th year after the Hijrah was a very significant year in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions, and many an important incident and many an important event also occurred in the 4th year after the Hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that shaped the future for the Muslims living in Medina, and shaped the future of Muslims the worldwide, because of the events that happened in that year. In the first month of Muharram, there was the incident which occurred when the Prophet ﷺ was informed that Tulayha and his brother Salama were both conspiring to lead a tribe against the Muslims. And in that month, Tulayha bin Khuwaylid and his brother got together a tribe from Banu Asad and conspired with them to attack the Muslims. And it so happened, with the hukam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the Banu Asad persons, he realized, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him some guidance, some hidayah, and he went to Medina and he informed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Tulayha and his brother are conspiring with Banu Asad to give harm to the Muslims. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prepared Abu Salama and with him a small contingent of Muslims to go and apprehend Banu Asad and Tulayha and attack them before they could attack the Muslims. So Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Abu Salama, and he sent with him, in some narrations, about 150 Muslims went with him, and they reached the place where Tulayha and his brother were camped with Banu Asad, and they remained there for a few days. And there were many great Sahaba, Ansar, Muhajir, who had also involved themselves in Badr and Uhud, who were with Hazrat Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala. And they reached Banu Asad on a secret from a pathway which was not well known, so that as not to let the kuffar and the Banu Asad come to realize that the Muslims had already reached there before they could even attack. But somehow they came to realize that the Muslims had secretly come upon their camp, and Allah put the fear of the Muslims in their heart, and they scattered from there. They did not wish to engage with the Muslims, even though they were conspiring to attack Medina, which was full of Muslims. Yet when they came to realize that a small contingent of 150 to 200 men of the Muslims had come to their camp, instead of engaging with them, they left their booty and they ran away and they fled from that place. Hazrat Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala. Now Hazrat Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala had previously been part of the events at Uhud, and he had been injured there. A part of his side and his shoulder had been severely injured. And from that time until the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had given him the amirship of leading these men, he was resting and recuperating himself and becoming well because of that injury. And he had just about recovered when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him to go on this expedition. So when the kuffar had fled, they left behind a great number of their belongings, camels and armory, and a lot of their stuff they had left behind because they fled in haste. And so Hazrat Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala anhu and his companions, without the need to fight, were able to lay their hands on this booty, and they collected this booty. And Hazrat Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala anhu made it a point to give a considerable amount of that booty to the Banu Asad person who had come to inform the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of the intentions of the two brothers with Banu Asad. And then the rest of the amount he took out 1/5, as was the ruling of that time, for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the remaining he distributed between the men that had come with him, and in some narrations quite a large amount of booty came to each one of the companions who had come with him. And then he returned to Medina. But this expedition, and he returned and he informed the Prophet ﷺ and gave the Kargudari and the news of what had happened in the expedition. But this outing of Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala, who took its toll on his previous injury, which he had sustained in Uhud. And therefore, he felt sick again, and his son Umar bin Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala narrates in one of the hadith that this toll took him, and within a few days, and in some narrations within a week and a half, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he became martyred, and he went into, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him into the hereafter. And that's when Hazrat Umar, the son of Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala anhu, narrates, then my mother, Salama radiallahu ta'ala anhu, went into iddah of death for 4 months and 10 days. And thereafter, within that year, the nikah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took place with Abu Salama, the wife of, with Salama, the wife of Abu Salama radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and which is then, she became the wife of the Prophet and became one of the Ummahatul Mu'mineen, which is later on in the year. So that one incident happened within the first month of the 4th year of Hijrah. Very soon after, there was another small contingent that the Prophet ﷺ sent, because he heard of another. See, what was happening was, immediately after Uhud, after Badr, the fear of the Muslims had set about in the kuffar. But immediately after Uhud, because of the small altercation that happened between the Muslims and where the kuffar acquired some sort of a victory over the Muslims and some sort of a revenge over the killing of the kuffar in Badr, some of the kuffar started acquiring some sort of feeling that they could maybe overcome the Muslims, because they now won one battle and sort of lost to a degree another battle. So maybe the Muslims weren't as strong as they thought them to be, and therefore they were conspiring to try and overtake the Muslims, or and give some sort of some harm to the Muslims. So they were constantly trying to get people to attack the Muslims. So soon after, the Prophet ﷺ came to know of another incident, and he then sent another small contingent with Hazrat Abdullah ibn Unais radiallahu ta'ala anhu as the leader of this contingent, who also went to a tribe that was conspiring to attack the Muslims. But there again, there was a small skirmish there. The leader of that tribe was beheaded by Abdullah ibn Unais radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and the news was brought back to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and that small by the kuffar, the uprising by the kuffar were also laid to rest. At the same time, the news of the Muslims was reaching the kuffar, the other tribes in the outskirts of Medina. And every now and then somebody would come to Medina with some news of some tribe showing interest in Islam, as well as some tribes conspiring to harm the Muslims. There were other tribes who were showing interest in the Muslims and finding out about how the Muslims were leading their lives. And on one such occasion, a contingent came to the Prophet ﷺ, and people from the tribe of Adl and Waqqara, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said, "Oh Prophet of Islam, our tribe has shown some interest in Islam. So would it not be, we would request that if you could send us some Muslims to teach us about Islam, teach us about the rulings of Islam, about life as a Muslim, and we would appreciate if you could send us a few people or a jama'ah to come and teach us about Islam." So the Prophet ﷺ thought about it, and he created a small group of Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in, and in some riwayats, there was in the riwayat of Bukhari rahmatullah, in the riwayat of Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi, 10 of these people, 10 of these Sahabas were prepared by the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and in one riwayah, Murthid ibn Abi Murthid was made the Amir, and in another riwayah it comes as Asim bin Thabit radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was made the Amir of this Jama'at, and they were given instructions by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they set off. And they reached a place because they were set off just for the sake of helping and teaching Islam. They reached a place, and once they reached this place called Raji, which was near the waters of Hudayl, they were secretly set upon by the tribe of Hudayl, and they weren't aware, and they weren't prepared for fighting. They were prepared to go and do da'wah and call people or teach them about Islam, and they were suddenly set upon by the tribe of Hudayl, and they were set in their camp when Hudayl came about and surrounded them. So the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in realized that they were being surrounded by hostile tribes, not by people who were expecting them to come to them. And so the Sahaba told them that we haven't come out to fight. We've come here because we were instructed by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the request of the people of Adl and Waqara to come out here and propagate Islam and not to fight. And therefore we're not here to fight and combat yourself. But they realized that the people of Huzayl were not there to listen to their reasoning, and they set about to attack them. And when this happened, the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim, out of the 10, 7 of the Sahaba retaliated and they tried to defend themselves, but Zakwan were large in number, the Huzayl was large in number, and 7 of the 10 gained shahada and martyrdom in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The 3 of the 3 that were left behind, and out of the 7, Asim bin Thabit radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was a prominent Sahabi, he was martyred by this Hudayl tribe, and the Hudayl, on a later incident, they came to realize that, as a very famous incident which we probably heard in our ta'aleems and stuff, where Asim radiallahu ta'ala anhu had killed the 2 sons of a mushrika who was part of the Quraysh, and she had given out a bounty for the head of Asim radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and she had vowed that because he had he had assassinated her 2 sons. To her it was an assassination, but they were in Uhud, he had killed the 2 kuffar and they were her sons, and she had vowed that if I was to come across Asim and somebody was to kill him, I would take his head and drink wine from his skull. So she had told, so this story was quite famous around Makkah and Medina, and the Quraysh were looking for people who would be able to do this. So Huzayl had come to know of this. So they had vowed that once they realized that it was Asim who they had killed in this skirmish, they vowed to take Asim and hopefully try and gain the booty from the kuffar or the Quraysh for his head. So they set about trying to get hold of Hazrat Asim radiallahu ta'ala. Now Hazrat Asim radiallahu ta'ala, as a true believer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahu Akbar, as a true believer, had made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, let no mushrik touch me and let me not touch any mushriks, lest my body or my hands would become soiled from them. And he had made this dua with so much sincerity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had accepted his dua in what manner? Even though he lay as a dead corpse there for the kuffar to take hold of, have no control over his own self. When the kuffar tried to try and take hold of his skull or his head, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down a swarm of wasps who covered his body. And the kuffar were not able to get near to him to be able to take away his or decapitate his body and take part of his body away and give it to the kuffar. So then they spoke between themselves and they said, look, it's daytime now and the wasps are here. By night time the wasps will disappear. And so we'll come back tomorrow and we'll take what we need to take and we'll claim what we need to claim from the Quraysh. And but during the night, lo behold, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's amr came about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a torrent of rain and a flood came by and washed away Hazrat Asim radiallahu ta'ala and his body until Allah knows best now. Nobody knows where his body went, and the kuffar were not able to take hold of Hazrat Asim radiallahu ta'ala and his body or his parts. And later on in life, Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala used to mention, and he used to say that this used to be the sincere dua of Hazrat Asim radiallahu ta'ala, that he used to make, that, oh Allah, let not any mushrik touch me, and let not me touch any mushrik, any disbeliever, any worshipper of idols, and any polytheist. So Allah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Abdullah bin Tariq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Those three, because these were Sahabas who weren't sent out to fight, they didn't put up much of a fight and they were eventually caught. When they were caught, the kuffar then even did say that we will not harm you, come with us and we will take you somewhere. And as soon as they laid down their arms, the kuffar took hold of them and they tied them up. Hazrat Abdullah bin Tariq radiallahu ta'ala who said this is the first of their treacherous pledges. And therefore, he made an intention to do something about it. At that moment, he wasn't in a position to do anything. The kuffar started taking them. They reached a place called Banu Nadir, and there Hazrat Abdullah bin Tariq was somehow able to free himself from his bond, from the ropes that he was tied in, and he was able to take hold of a sword, and he confronted the kuffar. And the kuffar, even though they were well high in number, were so scared of combating Hazrat Abdullah bin Tariq that they didn't go near him. Yet they pelted him with stones and rocks as best as they could, until Hazrat Abdullah bin Tariq was also martyred in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then they were left with two, Hazrat Khubayb and Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina, and they took them to Mecca, and there the Meccans had hold of two of Huzayl's they had two of Huzayl's men as prisoners. So Huzayl went up to the Meccans and exchanged the two Sahabas for their two prisoners that they were holding, and they took them to, and both of them were taken by the kuffar. Now there were people in there who had some sort of enmity with either Hazrat Khubayb or Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina radiallahu ta'ala. And therefore Hazrat Khubayb was taken by Hujayl bin Ihab, because Hujayl bin Ihab, who's Tamimi, he'd taken him because of Uqbat ibn Harith, who had been killed by Khubayb in Ghazwa Badr, in the conflict of Badr. So he took hold of Khubayb and said, I will take Khubayb in my capture, and he took Khubayb. And Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina radiallahu ta'ala anhu was taken by Safwan ibn Umayyah, because Safwan ibn Umayyah's father had also been killed. So he said, because the Muslims had killed my father, I'm going to take Zayd bin Dathina radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And both these were taken. And two very famous incidents then happened with these two Sahabas that we've heard in Ta'leems as well. Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now, even though the kuffar were disbelievers, they always they used to still respect some sanctity of haram. So when they wished or decided that they wanted to do something which was against the sanctity of haram, they would ensure that they wouldn't violate the sanctity of haram. And therefore, when they decided that it was time to revenge or avenge the relations who had been killed in Badr or Uhud, they decided that they would assassinate the Sahaba. So Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina was decided to be assassinated, and at that time Abu Sufyan, who had still not become Muslim, as we know Abu Sufyan became Muslim during the conquest of Mecca, he was also one of the leaders of the Meccans. They decided to assassinate Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina. They took him out to Tanim. Now Tanim is on the outskirts of Haram, where they're allowed to, where bloodshed is not as harmful in their religion as well as in Islam as it would be in Haram. So they took him out to Tamim, and there they were about to assassinate him. And these are the moments where those famous words by Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when Abu Sufyan said to him, would you not wish that instead of you it would be Muhammad in your place? Would you not wish that you were at home with your family in the comfort of your own warm homes, and the Prophet was here in your place? And Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina said those famous words, I wouldn't wish that a thorn would even inflict the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and I was to be kept alive. And there's what Abu Sufyan used to say, that he said it at that moment when he was still a kafir. I have never seen a tribe, I have never seen a people love their leader as much as I've seen these companions love Muhammad. They are even prepared to lay down their lives for the sake of Muhammad and not allow even a thorn to prick the Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then Hazrat Zayd bin Dathina radiallahu ta'ala anhu was assassinated in Tanim. Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala anhu at that time was still in captivity, and in some narrations it so happens that it happened on the same day, and in some narrations it happened after the months of Haram had passed by, Ashhur Hurum had passed by, and some narrations it was a few months later. But he was kept in captivity in the house of one of the kuffar, whose slave girl by the name of Muawiyah used to narrate, who then became a Muslim later on, and she used to narrate that Hazrat Khubayb was in captivity in my master's home, and I used to be working around the house, and I used to come upon Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala anhu at times when he would be sitting with a bunch of grapes, the bunch of grapes would be the size of a man's head, so much grapes, at a time when there was no grape season in Mecca. And I used to wonder, where was he getting this provision from? And it so happened once that they decided that they would assassinate Hazrat Khubayb, and we came to know of it, and Hazrat Khubayb came to know of it. So he requested that, can I have a razor to clean myself before I meet my Lord? So out of not understanding the consequences, I gave a razor to one of my young child to take to Hazrat Khubayb. And he took the razor, so he was a child who could run, who could walk, and he took the razor and he ran into the house, and as soon as I gave the razor and he ran, it dawned on me, what have I done? I've given a razor blade and my son. In some narrations it says a boy, and some narrations it says it was her son. It says I'd given a razor blade for my son to carry to a captive of ours who we had tormented. And the worst, she felt the worst, that if he's going to die anyway. So regardless of what, he could use this razor blade against my son. And I ran inside and I saw that my child was sat in the lap of Hazrat Khubayb, who had a razor blade in his hand, and he saw me. And he looked at me and he said, do you think that I'm going to do what you're thinking I'm going to do? Because Hazrat Khubayb realized that she came in rushing. So he said, do you think that I'm going to do what you think I'm going to do? This is not what my Lord and my Prophet has taught me. And he let my son go, and he came back to me. And then he prepared himself, and then the kuffar came and they took him out to Tanim. And here also, Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala who turned towards the kuffar, and he said to them, if you allow me, I would like to read 2 rakat salat, 2 rakat for my Lord. And he went aside and they gave him the permission, and he went aside and he read his 2 rakat of in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the famous words of Hazrat Khubayb. He returned back and he said, had I not known, or had I not feared, that you would have thought that I prolonged my prayers out of fear of death. Out of fear of death, I would have prolonged my prayers. But because I feel that you might think that I'm scared of death and a coward, I therefore made my 2 rakats as short as I felt it would be necessary. And then he presented himself, and na'udhu billah, they had erected a scaffold type of erection, and they placed Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala anhu onto it. They sort of put him onto there, and in some narrations, a young child was given a spear, and one of the elders had hold of that child, and that child later on became a Muslim, who then refuted the fact that I did not kill Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala. The spear was put into my hand, and one of the elders had held onto my hand, and then he held my hand and struck the spear into Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala anhu became a martyr. Now Hazrat Khubayb's body was still kept there, and a later version, something happened during that time, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to know of what these people had done, and Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala anhu was still there when, in another incident, another Sahabi by the name of Hazrat Amir radiallahu ta'ala anhu also, he came to know of what had happened, and Hazrat Amr ibn Umayyah, he came to know of what had happened, and he had, in another incident, had reached Makkah, and he'd been there in secret, because people knew him as an assassin before Islam. And so what had happened was, Abu Sufyan had found out that the Prophet ﷺ had not been killed, so he made an announcement, is there anybody who will go and kill Muhammad for me? So this Bedouin came up to Abu Sufyan in the dead of night, and he came up to him, he says, I'm ready to kill Muhammad, what can you offer me? And they had a secret talk. So Abu Sufyan told him, I don't want you to mention this to anybody. He says, nobody, this is between me and you. And he then acquired his camel, his mount, and he went off to Medina, and it took him 4, 5, 6 days, and he got to Medina, and nobody knew of this except for Abu Sufyan and this Bedouin. And when he reached there, the Prophet ﷺ was with her companion in the masjid, and he came and he started asking and inquiring about the Prophet ﷺ as he had known, and he came into Medina and he saw the Prophet, and the Prophet ﷺ said to the Sahaba, see this Bedouin who's coming, this person, he means me harm. That's all. So he came close to the Prophet, he said, who's Muhammad? And they said, this is Muhammad. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I am Muhammad, what is it that you want? And he said, I'd like to speak to you. And he came close by, and he had hid a dagger within his clothing, and he came up too close to the Prophet ﷺ as though he's speaking to the Prophet ﷺ and speaking in confidence. When one of the Sahabas who'd heard the Prophet ﷺ said, this means me harm, he came up and he moved him away. He says, no, you're not speaking to the Prophet. And then they searched him, and they found the dagger. And the Prophet ﷺ then asked him, so he said, oh Prophet, oh Muhammad, and he told him the whole story. He said, but nobody knew about this. How did you know? So because as soon as I told Abu Sufyan, I left there, so nobody else could have come from there to tell you, because I left immediately from there. And I came on a fast mount right into Medina. So I can only believe that you were told by Allah, and by God, by Allah. And therefore he was then held in captivity, and after a few days the Prophet ﷺ then asked him, either I can free you if you say I can speak to you and then you can be free, or the Prophet ﷺ said I can keep you in captivity. And then the Prophet ﷺ gave him dawah, and he became a Muslim, and the Prophet told him that he could leave, and then he stayed there in the company of the Prophet ﷺ, and then he left. Now at that time the Prophet ﷺ said, is there anybody ready to kill Abu Sufyan because of his conspiracies and his so that time Amr ibn Umayyah got ready, and with another Sahabi, and they went to Makkah. Now he was known as an assassin before in Jahiliyyah. So when he got there, his companion said, let's go and do tawaf as well. So he said, no, people know me here. I'm going to stay in hiding until I have the opportunity to do what the Prophet ﷺ says. He said, no, but if you can make tawaf as well, and then we can read salat and we'll come back out. So he then said, okay, and they went and made. As they were coming out, they were met by Muawiyah, the son of Abu Sufyan, and he said, this is Amr ibn Umayyah. So what are you doing in Makkah? He said, and he screamed at the Makkans that this is Amr ibn Umayyah. He is a great assassin from the time of Jahiliyyah, and he's a Muslim now. For him coming here has to be some sort of he's come for some reason here. So both the Sahaba, they escaped the clutches of the kuffar and they were hidden into the mountains, and the story goes ahead, they were pursued by the kuffar and they hid, they were skilled mountaineers, so they were able to escape the kuffar. And as it came about, at that same time they came across to Tamim, and there they were told of Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala anhu being assassinated. So Hazrat Amr ibn Umayyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was told by his companion that there's Khubayb, he's still on the wooden scaffolding that they built to assassinate him. Therefore, can we not? He says, okay, you mount your camel, and if I do not return in such and such a time, then you carry on to Medina, and we'll see what will happen. Because he feared for his own life. He said there was a guard there who was looking after the site where Hazrat Khubayb was. He said, I managed to get myself up to Khubayb. I climbed the wooden scaffolding, and I took down Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and I brought him down. And in some narration it says, I went up to 20 steps with him, and then the kuffar were alerted. And they all came out, and I had to place Hazrat Khubayb down and find some place for me to hide. He said, and in some narration he said, I put him down, there was some pieces of wood still with him, so I put him down, I covered him with a little bit of mud to hide him, and then I hid somewhere. And after a while, and in one narration he says, I left and I turned behind, and Hazrat Khubayb was nowhere to be seen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His infinite mercy had taken away Hazrat Khubayb, and I could not see him, neither kuffar could see where he was, and I stayed in hiding until I met my companion, and then we went back to Medina and we told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of the story of Hazrat Khubayb radiallahu ta'ala. So in this way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped the Muslims even though they were in some sort of harm or in some sort of incident which was against them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that same month, not long after, another tribesman, a leader of a tribesman who was regarded as Mala'ibul Asinna. He was the toy of the spears because he was a very skilled spearsman. Abu Bara, Amir ibn Malik, he also came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he also, when he came, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam invited him to Islam. So in the narration it says he neither accepted, though he neither rejected Islam. But what he told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, O Prophet, O Muhammad, if you give me some people, I will take them to my tribe, and I will speak, and they can speak to them and teach them about Islam, and I am confident that they will accept Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed some apprehension, and he said, I fear for my Sahaba, because already one incident had happened. So he said that I am fearing for them. So Abu Bara said, no, I'll give you the assurance, and under my protection I will make sure that nothing will happen to them, and they will go for this reason. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they say that in some certain narrations 40, and in more authentic narrations 70 qurra of a high caliber in living with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prepared them, and they set off. And they set off for the teaching of Islam. But they hadn't reached far when they reached a place called Raji, which was a water hole, which was a well, and they realized that they had been surrounded by kuffar, and they understood that they'd been tricked or to a certain extent they believed that they'd been tricked. And when they got there, Banu Amir, near a place called the lavas of Bani Sulaim and Banu Amir, when they got there, they decided that one of the Sahabas, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in, by the name of Haram ibn Milhan, they thought that one of the leaders of these tribes lives nearby by the name of Amir. So they thought that they would send the letter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with Haram ibn Milhan and send it to Amir bin Tufail and see if maybe Amir bin Tufail would understand the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and because he was one of the tribal leaders, he would bring about some sort of understanding. So Haram ibn Milhan radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he went and he presented this letter to Amir bin Tufail, but the accursed Amir bin Tufail didn't even read the letter properly. He tore up the letter and he gestured to one of his security people to, na'udhu billah, murder Hazrat radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Haram ibn Milhan, and the person from behind, he attacked Hazrat Haram and he was assassinated and he was martyred. When he done with this, he turned around to Banu Amir, his people, and he told them, okay, let us attack the Muslims now. They're less in number, we're large in number, but Banu Amir declined and they said no. One of our leaders, Abu Bara, had given protection to these Muslims and we're not there, so some of these kuffar still had some sort of consciousness and of pledges. So they turned around and said, we're not ready to break the pledge of Abu Bara. So then he realized that Banu Amir were not ready, so he went to Banu Sulaim, the Qabails of Banu Sulaim, Ra'al and Dakwan and Usayya and Bin Lahayan, and he went up to them and he instigated them, and they were ready to attack the Muslims, and he took with them and they attacked the Muslims, and just about every single one of them they martyred, except for one Sahabi by the name of Ka'b bin Zayd, who was severely wounded and he was within the line on the grounds of with the other Sahaba, and he sort of was able to save himself because he was severely injured, but he remained lying still. And other than that, every other Sahabi Ridwanullahi ta'ala majma'in were murdered and were martyred. And the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala majma'in made dua that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam be made to know of this incident. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was informed of their martyrdom, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned it to the Sahaba that 70 of our brothers have been martyred, mercilessly martyred. They've been to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's a treachery going on behind. Somebody had given us protection and they've not carried it out. And one of the famous poets of the time has Zayd bin Sabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Hazrat Abu Bara, that Abu Bara has cheated us. And when Abu Bara came to know of this, he was not part of it. When he came to know of it, he went to claim his innocence to say, "O Prophet, I gave you my protection and I was true to my word. This was done by Amir bin Tufail. He is one of our leaders, but he was the one who did this treachery." And Zayd bin Sabit radiallahu ta'ala, who the point of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then said some couplets in which he instigated the tribes of Abu Bara to take avenge on his, because somebody had broken his pledge to avenge Amir bin Tufail. And therefore somebody on his mother's side, the tribe people on his mother's side, took up arms and they attacked Amir bin Tufail. And Amir bin Tufail was injured, and he fell from his horse, but he wasn't killed. And he did say that if I am killed, then my blood should be given, the responsibility of my blood should be given to my uncle, and he should not avenge Abu Bara. And if I am alive, then I'll decide what I need to do or what I want to do. As that was happening, the same Amr bin Umayyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu and another Sahabi were grazing with there, because Ra'al and Zakwan is not too far away from Medina. So Hazrat Amr ibn Umayyah was at that time with another Sahabi, and he from afar could see there was something going on, and therefore he'd seen that vultures and birds were flying around. So they realized there's some bloodshed going on there, and they came upon the martyrs of Bir Ma'una. It was called the story, the incident of Bir Ma'una, and the kuffar was still there. As they came along, they came upon them and they saw this, and they said, "What's this?" And the Sahabi who was there, Amr ibn Umayyah, said, "Let us go back and let the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam." He said, "No, I can't take this. They've murdered and they've martyred our brothers." And so he laid on into the kuffar, and he was outnumbered, but he showed his courage, and then he was also shaheed, and he became shaheed. And Amr ibn Umayyah was captured, but when he was brought into the kuffar, there was some incident that had happened with one of the kuffar's mothers, and there was a pledge, and he realized that Amr ibn Umayyah, because of this incident, they had this practice between themselves that if they wanted to free someone, they would take a lock of their hair, cut their hair, and say, "I free you, and now I've repaid you for whatever other pledge we had in the past." So one of the kuffar had some sort of pledge with his mother and the family of Amr ibn Umayyah, so he said, "You know what, I will repay my due," and he cut his hair and said, "You're free to go." Amr ibn Umayyah left from there, and he came to make his way back to Medina. He came to rest under some trees because he'd taken some time to rest, and there he met up, in one narration, two men of Banu Amir, and in another narration, Banu Kilab. So there was Banu Kilab's tribes was Banu Amir. He met two of them there. So he met them there. So he said, "Where are you from?" He said, "Oh, we're from Banu Amir." Now they weren't aware of what had happened, but they'd just been to Medina, and they'd had a pledge with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had held a pledge with them to side with them if something was to happen. So they were in discussion with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Amr ibn Umayyah was unaware of this, but he'd just come back from this incident where 70 of the Sahaba had been murdered. 71 of the Sahaba he'd seen their corpse in front of the kuffar. So when these two, they spoke, and then they laid down to rest, and when they were resting and unaware, Hazrat Amr took their lives, thinking that this is revenge for the Sahaba that had been murdered and martyred in Bir Ma'una. And he came back to Medina, and this is where he came back and he told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam all of that had happened. Now two incidents happened here. One, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard this, the famous incident of the month of leading out Qunut and Nazila, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Salatul Fajr, after the second rakat, would stand up and he started making cursing Ra'al and Dakwan and Usayya, the tribes who had martyred the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. And for one whole month, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did this, what was called Qunut Nazila, and he used to curse those tribes that had done this oppression on the Muslims and the treachery that they had done. And the Prophet ﷺ, in different narrations, he did it for 1 month, and then he stopped after a month. And the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala, and then the whole incident of Qunut Nazila is derived for the fuqaha, where they talk about if there is incidents happening around the world and Muslims are being oppressed, then Qunut Nazila is read after Fajr for a certain amount of time. And the fuqaha have said, if the oppression is ongoing, it's continuous, where sometimes when we hear about incidents happening around the world, it's happening for many days, many weeks, sometimes many months. So the fuqaha say that we should read Qunut Nazila and curse and ask for the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and curse the oppressors and the oppression that is happening to Muslims. But if it's happening continuous, to remain within the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it should be done for 28 days, a month, and then maybe a few weeks you should give it a break, and then start again if it's a continuous event. If the event's finished, then fine, you do it for a month, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked by the Sahaba, why have you stopped what you were doing? He said, do you not see that the Sahaba are now in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And he said to this effect, to say, i.e. that now the oppression has now lowered itself. So the fuqaha said that if it's a continuous event, do it for a month, then wait a few weeks and then restart it again. So that the people realize that this is the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi also takes his hujjah from these narrations, and he makes Qunut in Fajr, but he does it as a continuous event. And now that's a separate debate. It's an intellectual debate between the fuqaha of whether Qunut should be done continuous. Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi takes it as a continuous event, and therefore the Shafis do Qunut in Fajr every day. And the Hanafis take it as an incidental matter, so that if there's an event, then you should do it for a few weeks, and then if the event's finished, then okay. If it's not, then give it a break and then start again. It's not a continuous amal to be done, or a practice to be done every day. The second incident of this was when Amr ibn Umayyah radiallahu ta'ala narrated to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he killed two of to avenge the death of the Sahaba. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, oh, these two had come to me with pledges, and I'd made a pledge with them, and with their tribe, and therefore we were in discussion with these two, and therefore you killing them, even though you were unaware, is going to make me have to give blood money on their behalf to their tribes, because we were in pledge with them, regardless of them being part of Banu Amir. But one of their qabail, one of their tribes, we were in pledge with them, therefore we're not allowed to do this. And therefore the Prophet ﷺ said, now at that time the Prophet ﷺ had also been in pledge with when the Prophet ﷺ had come and made hijrah to Medina, they were small in number, they weren't as strong as they would like to be, and they needed some sort of security. So at that time the Prophet ﷺ made pledges. The stronger tribes of Medina were the Jews. So the Prophet ﷺ had made pledges with the Jews, and out of the Jews there were three strong tribes of Banu Qaynaqa, Banu Nadir and Banu Qurayza. And the Prophet ﷺ had made pledges with them, and those pledges were still ongoing with Banu Nadir and Banu Qurayza. Banu Qaynaqa had already broken their pledges, and the Prophet ﷺ had dealt with them. Now when the Prophet ﷺ realized that blood money had to be given to Banu Kilab, Banu Amir, he went to Banu Nadir, to the Jews of Banu Nadir. He went up to them, and this is where the third incident of the Raqq'a of Banu Nadir, the Raqq'a of Banu Nadir, or the incident of Banu Nadir occurs. So the Prophet ﷺ went to Banu Nadir, and he told them, look, we are part, we have a contract, or we have an understanding between us, and one of my people has done something in which I am now liable to pay blood money. Will you help me in paying that blood money? So initially the Banu Qurayza were very open, and they said, oh yes, come, yes, we'll sort something out, you need to come, we can talk it out, this, that and the other. And they said, if you remain here. So the Prophet ﷺ had gone there with Hazrat Ali, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala, and a few Sahaba. And they made the Prophet ﷺ sit beneath, in some narrations a wall, in some narrations a house, in which they could climb onto the wall of the house. And they kept them there, and they moved away. And then they started speaking secretly, and they said, what better chance do we have of getting rid of the Prophet? Could we not find somebody who's able to do something to harm the Prophet, or even assassinate the Prophet? Na'udhu billah. So one of the Banu Qurayza Jew, he got himself ready, and he said, I can climb onto the back of that house, onto the wall, and I can accidentally let one of the boulders or rocks come down onto the Prophet, and that's it, our work is done. So they said, fine, you go and do this. Now, as they were conspiring to do this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the medium of Jibreel Amin, informed the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now the Prophet was sat there with the Sahaba. He got up and he walked away without saying a word. The Sahaba, Ridwanullahi ta'ala al-Majma'in, as they were followers of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they looked around, they said, why is the Prophet walked off? They said, well, why is he walked off? He's walked off, we walk off. And so they all stood up and they walked off. And as they went away from there, the Prophet ﷺ turned down and told him, I've been informed that the Banu Qurayza were conspiring to assassinate me. And then the Prophet ﷺ sent a message to Banu Qurayza. They couldn't hide the fact that they were doing. He sent a message to them to say, I have come to know of what you were conspiring to do, and therefore you've broken the pledge. Prior to this, they'd done many other smaller things which had violated the pledge. They violated the understanding between them. But this was now the ultimate. The Prophet ﷺ said, you've broken too many promises, this is the final straw. I'm demanding that you leave Qurayza and go somewhere else. Leave. Banu Nadir, Na'udhu Billah, it's not Qurayza, it's Banu Nadir. I want you to leave and that's it. Initially they decided that they wanted to leave. I'm sorry, it's not Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir. So initially they said, yes, we want to leave. But then what happened was, this is Banu Nadir. Yeah, it's Banu Nadir. Yeah, Banu Nadir. This was, they decided, okay, we'll have to leave. But then what happened was, Rasul Munafiq, Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, sent them a message. So don't leave. We'll back you up. Stand and be firm and fight, and we'll back you up. And I've got 2,000 men who will come and help you. And if, Na'udhu Billah, if it so happens that you have to leave, we'll leave with you. We'll leave with you, don't worry, we're with you. So when they heard that Rasul Munafiqeen, the leader of the Munafiqeen, of the hypocrites, Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, was giving them this assurance, and they said there's other Jewish tribes around, they'll also come as well. We'll also instigate and get them ready to come and help you. So don't be afraid. So they said, they sent a message to the Prophet, do what you wish, we are staying put. We are not moving from here. So the Prophet ﷺ said, fine. Within a few days, radiallahu ta'ala, he got ready and they went and they surrounded the forts of, now they had strong forts as well. So they were looking at their forts, they were looking at the promise of the leaders of the Munafiqeen, of the hypocrites, Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, and they were thinking, yeah, we've got enough in our forts to be able to survive, and they locked themselves in, and the Sahaba, when they came, they could not enter the forts, so they surrounded the forts, and then they waited, and they waited, and they were waiting for the Munafiqeens to come, the other Jewish tribes to come, but nobody was to come. Munafiq is a Munafiq. He didn't come, neither did any of his Munafiqeen friends come, neither did any of the other Jews come. And slowly and surely, in some relations, after a 15-day surrounding, the Jews realized that they were on the losing end, and they started talking to the Prophet to say, can we talk about it now, and can we do something about it? The Prophet ﷺ sent them the message that if you so wish, you can leave. But these are some of the conditions, and some of the conditions were, you're not allowed to take any of your armory, none of your military resources are you able to take. And in some narrations he said, I will give you 3 men to 1 camel and 1 carriage to take your. Now whilst that was happening, some of the Jews were also conspiring to attack the Muslims, because they had many orchards around the fort, outside the fort, and they used to sometimes hide in those orchards and attack or send arrows and spears, and then sometimes go back into their fort. So the Prophet ﷺ, and they used to be very proud of their orchards. So the ruling was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ said, burn down some of their orchards. And they started, the Muslims started burning down some of the orchards. Now, when the Jews saw this, they said, oh Prophet, you used to say that you shouldn't burn down. So they used to start, on the one hand, they used the orchards as their hiding places. And once they saw that the Muslims were burning them there, they started to blame the Muslims for going against the word of Allah by burning down. What has an orchard done? What harm has an orchard done to you that you're burning down? But anyway, this was happening, and then once they realized that they weren't going to get any help from the Munafiqeen or they started talking. The Prophet ﷺ then said that you're able to go as long as you do not take any armory with you, you don't take any of that stuff, and whatever you can take in one carriage between 3 people and 1 camel, you can take that. Now the Jews were so materialistic that anything that they could take, whether it was worth anything to them, even after they took it off, they started ripping down their own homes, the doors and the lintels and anything that, it's like somebody is told to leave your house, so you take down the hinges of your doors and you take down the woods or outside your front step door and take all that. They started ripping up anything and everything that they could, and they packed themselves up and they had to leave. And some of them went as far as Syria, and some of them went to Khaybar, and there they were. A reception was given by the Jews of Khaybar, and singing women were given to them, and they left. And the Prophet ﷺ then entered into the forts of Nadir, and he got hold of the whole of the Nadir lands and the Khaybar. And now this is where the other ruling of Ghanima and Fay comes into effect. Now, as you all know, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and at that time when the Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala used to go out on an expedition and they used to acquire booty, they used to share it among themselves, because that used to be there, because they'd be leaving home for 3, 4, 5 months, they'd leave their businesses, their harvest, and they'd go out. So whatever they'd lose at home, they would gain, and even more with booty that they would bring back. So up until the time of Umar radiallahu ta'ala, now during the time of Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he administered that the Mujahideens would get a stipend from the treasury. So then the whole booty thing was an administrative ruling he made, and it was then changed. But during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is what the Sahaba used to gain for them going out. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the ruling that Ghanima will be distributed will be distinguished between that which was acquired through military fighting and that which was acquired without any military fighting. So if you were engaged in fighting, in hand-to-hand combat, and you acquired booty, then that booty would be distributed in a different manner from booty that was acquired without you having to excel any force or having to expenditure any of your might or any of your resources. So that would be, and the term that the fuqaha use is that the one where you had fighting would be regarded as ghanima, and the one where there was no fighting would be regarded as fay. Now what would happen in ghanima is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Bara'a, وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَلِذِي الْقُرْبِ, where 1/5 would be given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Allah and His Prophet, i.e. meaning that Allah and His Prophet would use it on for the benefit of the Muslims and give it to the poor and the yatim, and 4/5 would be given to the Muslim mujahideen who had gone out and fought. But in Fay, where there was no fighting, it would be the other way around. All of it would be given to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ would keep 1/5 in the treasury, and the other 4/5 in some narration, he would distribute it as he saw fit. Because because of this, this new ruling was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, and also the whole incident of Banu Nadir, of what they had done. A whole surah of Surah Al-Hashr, Surah Al-Hashr was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in it Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals ma'afa Allah, of what Allah has returned back to you as faith. So if he is returned back to you without any fighting, then it remains with the Prophet, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam will distribute it as he wishes and as he sees best. And if it's ghanima where you've given out some of your life or you expended your resources, then that will be given to you as 4/5. Now in this, because of Banu Nadir, the Prophet ﷺ had acquired it without any fighting, and this revelation had come to the Prophet ﷺ. So now as we know, when the Sahaba had migrated, the Prophet ﷺ had created the brotherhood between the Ansar and the Muhajir. And what he told the Ansar is, if you are able to half or give some portion of your wealth to the muhajirs, so that they are your brothers and you can share with them, so that they can live and be able to live their life in Medina until a better time comes. The Ansar had, Allahu Akbar, had given up many of their lands and their wealth and their homes, and to some degrees, some of them have even given their wives over to the muhajirs, and they were living like this. When Banu Nadir, and slowly the Prophet ﷺ was trying to make the muhajirs stand up on their own 2 feet. When Banu Nadir came, and a lot of booty came into the ownership of the Prophet ﷺ, he spoke to the Sahaba and he spoke to the Ansar, and he said, I wish to give this booty to the muhajirs so that they are standing on their own 2 feet. The muhajirs were delighted because now they were able to spend their own money rather than the money that they were given by the Ansar. And the Ansar were happy because they said, whatever the Prophet has decided, we are ready for it, and we have got back what we had given to the muhajirs. They are giving it back to us. So we've got what we had, and they've got what we need. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the ithar that the Sahaba Diwanullahi ta'ala in Surah Al-Hashr did, and he mentioned this in Surah Al-Hashr. So this became of what? The booty, and from that booty the Prophet ﷺ also used to run his own household as well, and give to his wives from that booty. And in that same surah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then talks about the munafiqeen, that they said that they promised that they would bring about and they would go out with them. It says we'll come out with you if they come out. Nothing of this happened. This is the face of the munafiqeen, and then Banu Nadir were then sent on their own way. Once this happened, the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala were now in a better position to be able to live a better life in Medina, and 2 out of the 3 tribes of the Jews had been evicted from around Medina, and they'd gone and were living elsewhere. The 3rd tribe, another incident happened with them later on in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's some of the incidents that happened. There's some more incident that also happened of Raqq'a, and also, but those are another stories, so we can inshallah leave them for some other time, inshallah.
Next one.
Okay, inshallah. Subhanallah. So that's inshallah. These are some of the stories. There will be some discrepancies if they are, like Jazakallah for Sheikh for pointing them out, and there will be others as well. But this is some of the stories that we could relate, inshallah. It's also very good to try and get hold of some Seerah kitab and make it a point in our own homes to read it, continuously. Take one book and read it, and then get into a more detailed book and read it, and make our families also read it. Sometimes we read these books and we think, oh, it's going to take a long time, but we get our children reading other novels of nothing, that has no teaching, that has no knowledge, and we get them to read them, and they'll read it for hours and hours and hours, and we don't have the love within us to read the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. We need to make it a point that inshallah we will read the Seerah and learn of what the Prophet ﷺ did, so that it becomes something for us to emulate for us and our children, inshallah. Subhanallah, bihamdihi, subhanakallah, wa bihamdihi, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfirullah.
Sheikh Zubair, mashallah, to take us through the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. And as you know, mashallah, as you have covered the battles, from the Battle of Badr to what we have got to now, to the eviction of Banu Nadir, that every single one of these battles, the Prophet ﷺ know the sort of instigators. The instigators were the kuffar, and in defense of that, the Prophet ﷺ sent out armies in order to repulse the aggression. As they say, the best defense sometimes a good offense. And even in the Battle of Badr, if you look, the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, when they went out, they did not go out to meet the caravan. They went out to strike fear into the Quraysh, to make them realize that do not attack Medina because your caravans are in our reach. Because these things was not in the capacity of the companions, anhum, some of them were great warriors, to overcome a caravan. It was totally in their capacity to overtake it. That's a great muhaqqiqeen of Seerah have mentioned, like Allah Mashali and others, as they have mentioned some of the great ulama, that they have said that the reason why the companions went out in the Battle of Badr to show to the kuffar of Quraysh of Makkah that to keep away from Medina Munawwarah. And they're not coming in within Medina Munawwarah because your trade routes on which you rely upon in the summer and in the winter is within our reach. But then when the kuffar fell upon the Muslims, and the Muslims had no response except to attack. So all the battles are like this, that all the battles that we've gone through today and what we went through previously, the Battle of Uhud and the Battle of Badr, were defensive by the Prophet ﷺ. And the next battle that we have, the next greatest battle that we have, the Battle of Khandaq, is the last battle in which the Quraysh come to the Muslims. After that, all the tribes come together, all of Makkah, all of the outlying regions, all of Hijaz, unite upon the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives success to the believers with the minimum loss of life. And after that day, thereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives futuhat to the believers, in which after that battle, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala paves the way for Fath Makkah. And inshallah ta'ala in the next month, inshallah, we'll continue the battle of Muraysiya, Banu Mustaliq, and also the hadith of Ifq, the great buhtan and the great slander upon our mother, Sayyidina Aisha, radiallahu anha. And we're going into some depth to show the genius of the Prophet ﷺ. How in an incident when one of his own household was accused of the slander against her, against our pure mother, how the Prophet ﷺ reacted with that. And that is great lessons for all of us, inshallah ta'ala. So jazakumullah khair again to Sheikh Zubair, inshallah. And we will notify you of the new time. It will be probably at the end of December now, inshallah ta'ala. And we, Allah thank Sheikh Zubair, inshallah ta'ala, give him ahsan jazak, and all of you for all of them for taking this time out, inshallah. Complete with dua, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ولا الوجود الحي القيوم لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين يا أحد الصمد الذي لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد يا أرحم الراحمين يا حي يا قيوم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام يا ذا القوة المتين اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات اللهم صل على محمد ألف صلاة اللهم صل على محمد صلاة تنجنا بها من جميع الأحوال والآفات وتقضي لنا بها جميع الحاجات وتطهرنا بها من جميع السيئات وترفعنا بها عندك أعلى الدرجات وتبلغنا بها أقصى الغايات من جميع الخيرات في الحياة وبعد الممات إنك على كل شيء قدير ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين اللهم ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين اللهم ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين اللهم ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولأساتذتنا ولمشايخنا ولجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وعملا متقبلا وشفاء كاملا عاجلا من كل داء اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع وقلب لا يخشى ونفس لا تشبع ودعاء لا يسمع اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار يا كريم اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة وما قرب إليها من قول أو فعل أو عمل ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار وما قرب إليها من قول أو فعل أو عمل اللهم إنا نسألك أن تجيرنا من كل بلاء الدنيا ومن عذاب الآخرة اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء رب اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء اللهم ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما اللهم يا واسع الفضل اغفر لنا يا واسع الفضل اغفر لنا يا واسع الفضل اغفر لنا ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه ونور عرشه سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.